Hey everybody, it's Kristianna Mrjenovich, otherwise known as the Second Chance Queen, and tonight is episode 3 of my Confidence Crown series, where I am going over my acronym SELF and my confidence building technique that I've developed. And tonight is the letter L, which stands for Listen to Positivity. So tonight's episode is going to talk about the importance of listening to positivity and listening to the angel on our shoulder, or the positive aspects of ourselves. Self-talk in general is something that most people experience. Whether it's positive or negative depends entirely on you as a person. There's a lot of aspects to self-talk and what we hear. Most people have that little voice inside their head. It either says I can or I can't. If you think of the little engine that could, the I think I can, I think I can, I think I can mentality. So that is positive self-talk. That is something that's really important. Listening to positivity in your own mind is a huge step towards building confidence and maintaining confidence. Everybody has moments where they falter. They feel like they can't do it. They're not good enough. All of these little negative things that we hear in our own head. And it's usually our own voice saying them in our head. But the important thing is to learn how to tune out that negative voice and to have that positive voice and listen to that positive voice first and foremost. Being able to reframe your thinking to be more positive over the negative. Something that I really had to learn to do since my experiences with domestic abuse is to learn to listen to that positive self-voice. That's really difficult for a lot of people, especially in abusive situations or, depending on some people's childhood, what they heard from their parents and how they were raised. A lot of times we hear that negative voice and it's second nature to listen to that negative voice because it's always more comfortable to stay where you are than to learn how to grow. So learning how to grow involves being positive and thinking that you can go up. One of my favorite phrases is, you cannot move forward while looking in the rearview mirror or you'll crash your car. And that has been a super true statement for me, because if you're so focused on the past, you're not going to be able to move forward and you're not going to be able to progress. So learning how to listen to that positivity and, practicing the self-care, practicing your skills, and practicing that self-care. So the first 2 letters come in handy here, but those start the process, and then you start to feel better about yourself. And then you really have to train your mindset to listen to that positive thinking. Now, I have heard from some people that they've only ever really had a neutral or a negative voice. So they've had to develop a positive voice. Affirmations can be a huge help with this. I highly recommend positive affirmations as a way to retrain your thought process. In my Confidence Crown workshops, I feature some small affirmations for the children that I teach and the Girl Scouts that I teach. And we do, I am smart, I'm beautiful, I'm strong, I'm loving, I'm kind, and I am confident. And the more you speak those words into existence, the more you're going to believe them. A lot of times the girls look at me when I'm crazy when I first introduce those affirmations. But I encourage them to really say those affirmations. And over time, the more you train yourself to say those things, the more you're going to start to learn to believe them. I was not a confident girl growing up. I struggled with self-confidence. I had those negative voices and I really listened to them. My first pageant system that I competed in, I listened to those negative voices and I didn't have the confidence, especially on the stage, that I've developed since. And now competing in International Ms. this year, there was a night and day difference between myself on the stage at my first pageant system and being on the stage at International Ms. Those who had the opportunity to see both of those performances by myself noticed how much improvement there was in that short amount of time. It was only about 8 months in between those 2 pageants. And I attributed a lot to confidence and self-care and practice, and then listening to positivity were key components of my improvement in building the confidence to where when I was on stage, you could see that confidence. So definitely listening to the positive voices inside your own head. The second part of Listen to Positivity is learning how to take compliments with grace and believing in them. That is something that to this day I struggle with. My husband will be the first one to tell you that I do not take compliments well. He will say, "Oh, you look so pretty." And I'm like, yeah, whatever. But I'm learning to practice what I preach, and I'm learning to take those compliments with grace, because I'm realizing that he is not the type of person to say those things if he doesn't mean them. So if he thinks I look beautiful, I need to allow him to believe that I look beautiful, and I need to believe that I look beautiful to him in those moments. And same thing with myself. I need to feel beautiful. Something as simple as doing my eyeliner. I did my eyeliner tonight, and I did a wing with a precision eyeliner, and I've never done that before. And did not mess it up, and I was shocked. I was super excited. So the positive voice in my head came out, and it was really kind of cool to have that default of that positive voice that was like, "You killed it. Oh my gosh." So that's something that I really think you have to practice, and you really have to reframe your mind. This is where therapy can be super beneficial, and it has been for myself, because learning how to take a compliment was one of the first goals that I set with my therapist when I started therapy last year. So I had to learn how to take those compliments with grace. And as I improved and as I felt stronger and as I developed myself, I began to take those compliments better. And now, I joke. Sometimes I make jokes that, make me sound like I'm the greatest thing in the world. And, people that don't know me would possibly interpret it as arrogance or being cocky. But really, it's just being confident and using my humor in a way. But that's something that I've developed now. And that's something that I love about myself. And being able to say that you love something about yourself is huge. You would not have caught me dead before I developed the confidence saying, "Oh, I love this about myself. I love that about myself." That's really been something that I struggled with. And it's just something that I've built up. I used to be very self-conscious about my body style. I've had 3 kids. I weigh the most that I've ever weighed in my life. And I'm actually now the most confident that I've ever been in my life. And I used to be very self-conscious about my stomach and about my curves and the shape of my body. And now it's one of my favorite things about myself. I love my curves. I love rocking my curves, and I love wearing things that show my body in a flattering light. And that's something that has taken a lot of time to get to that point. But you have to learn how to think of things in a positive way. It's really easy to say, "Oh, my stomach is disgusting because I've had 3 kids and it's just flabby or it's fluffy or whatever it is, and it's gross and I don't like it." It's a whole other thing to say, "You know what? I gave life with my body 3 times." There are people out there that would love to be able to give life, and they struggle with that. And I have to look at it in a positive light and say, that's something that I'm proud of. I'm proud of being able to give life and having my 3 children. So it's looking at things that you normally might not have thought of in that way, and being able to turn around and reframe your state of mind. Therapy is huge for this. And I believe this is where kind of cognitive behavioral therapy comes into play as well. So looking at cognitive behavioral therapy workbooks, I know there's some really great ones on Amazon, can be a great resource for adults to reframe their state of mind and their thinking with positive self-talk. But I encourage everybody to find affirmations that work for them. 1, 2, or 3 things, and say them out loud and practice them until you believe them. Confidence Crown workshops came out of needing to develop a method that I could teach to young girls and domestic abuse victims to raise their confidence up, because I recognize the need for confidence building. If you don't have self-confidence, you're more likely to fall prey into a domestic abuse situation. And when you get out of a domestic abuse situation, building your confidence is imperative to not going back into another domestic abuse situation. So the Confidence Crown workshops were built from that need for prevention resources as well as a recovery resource. And listening to positivity has been the third step that was probably the hardest for me with the workshops. because I began to practice that self-care and do my bubble baths and do the things that I love to do. And I started to feel better about myself. I started to be in a more positive frame of mind. Exercising my skills. I started to practice the things with pageantry. I started to do the volunteer work that I love to do. I started to develop my platform and really figure out who I was and the root cause of what I wanted, and to practice my skills of confidence, because that was huge. So I started to practice that. Being able to take a compliment is just as important as being able to take criticism. A lot of times people take criticism either very well or very badly. And that is something that I think everybody needs to be able to do, is to take constructive criticism that's given to you with a good intention and be able to turn that into improving. But being able to take a compliment is the same. You have to be able to take that compliment and really believe in that compliment, and able to know what you're doing right and what direction you need to continue to improve on, and, to be able to self-evaluate. So listening to positivity, both internally in your mind and externally, is a really important skill to develop and to exercise. The other thing about listening to positivity is it's also really easy to fall prey to listening to the negative. Negative feelings and negative emotions are very powerful. They can flood you. So being able to reframe your mindset and regroup is really important. One of the things that I love about the SELF acronym is that a lot of the components of self-care, prioritize, exercise your skills, listen to positivity, and next episode's fake it till you make it, is that all of those letters can be interchanged and you can circle back through all of those things. Self-care being prioritized is something that should always be at the top of your list. So you should maintain it. But if it starts to go down, you can circle back to it. Exercising your skills. That's even practicing self-care. So it aligns. Listening to positivity. If you're feeling negative, taking a break, practicing self-care, and giving yourself grace and time to regroup, you're circling back from L to S and even pulling some of that E in there. So the method is not only linear. It's not something that you only have to practice in one line. It's something that you can move those letters around and kind of scramble them to fit what you're feeling at that time and what you need to prioritize. But with listening to positivity, do not be afraid to circle back to the letter S and practice that self-care if you're struggling with listening to those positive voices. Self-care prioritized is S. It's the beginning, because it is the foundation for confidence. If you're not taking care of your body and your mind, you're not going to feel confident. There is no way that you can feel confident about yourself if you're not taking care of yourself, because there's not going to be anything that you're going to feel proud of. If I'm not taking care of myself, what is there to be confident about? Nothing. So practicing that self-care and getting a really firm self-care level, and then continuing to exercise the skills of self-care and also of listening to positivity. Listening to positivity is something that you really need to hone in on and be able to do. So it's a huge component of confidence building. I highly suggest that you find affirmations that work for you, whether you want to use the ones from Confidence Crown Workshop. I'm smart, I'm beautiful, I'm strong, I'm loving, I'm kind, I'm confident. Or you want to create your own affirmations. One thing that I can repeat every day is saying, I'm resilient. That is something that I believe about myself because of everything that I've been through. I can confidently say, I'm resilient. So if I'm having a bad day, I'm resilient. Reframing my mindset and just saying, you know what, I'll get through it. Something that's also helped me with listening to positivity is taking days one step at a time, one day at a time, sometimes 1 hour at a time. So I have really bad days sometimes. Everybody does. You're human, you have a bad day. That's just kind of how it is. Quite frankly, the last 2 weeks with the Gulf Coast getting hit by 2 hurricanes in a 2-week span has been a wild couple of weeks. So I've had some bad days in that time frame. I've had anxiety. I've had the negativity kind of creep in those moments. But sometimes I just have to take it hour by hour. Okay, I made it through an hour. Check. An hour goes by. Okay, made it through another hour. Check. Just slowing down, recognizing what I need and recognizing where my mind is at. And if you're having a really negative day, practice that self-care because it'll reframe your mind and restart the next day. That's also another thing to keep in mind and to think about is trying not to carry over negativity from one day to the next. My husband likes to joke that I have the memory or the memory capacity of a goldfish, which is very true. I'm like Dory from Finding Nemo sometimes when it comes to negativity because I feel it, I recognize it, I experience it, I let myself go through those emotions, and then 10, 15, 20 minutes later, however long it takes me to get past something, sometimes it's just going to bed that night and waking up the next day, I leave it where it was in the past. I try not to start the next day with negativity from the previous day. Because when you do that and you carry that over, it's like spilling a cup into the next cup, into the next cup, and just spilling all these cups into each other. You're going to continue that negative mindset. So if you're having a bad day, sit with it, feel it, move on. The next day when you wake up, start from scratch, start from zero, and practice positivity and say, it's a new day, it's a new opportunity, I'm going to tackle this today. And I think that will really help your mindset. And I know it's something that has really benefited me with my self-growth is not holding on to negativity. I contribute that part of my personality and that aspect of who I am to a lot of where I am at now, because if I wallowed and in the weight of everything I've experienced, I would be weighed down every day for the rest of my life. Spent 10 years in a very toxic, negative situation. I experienced things that women should not experience. I experienced things multiple, repeated times that women should not experience. And if I sat and felt the weight of those moments and sat and felt the weight of those experiences all the time, I would never rise because I would sink like an anchor. It's one thing to experience them. It's another thing to let those things go, to cut the anchor line and allow yourself to rise. So listening to positivity is extremely important, especially for those people, women who have experienced negative situations and trauma. PTSD can bubble to the surface and can cause us to regress a little bit, and that's okay. That's human. Everybody has setbacks. But learning how to cut that anchor cord and start swimming to the surface, and sometimes you might have something that makes you fall back down a little bit. But the goal is to keep elevating yourself and to keep healing until you can get to the surface and transcend the water, and then you're on the shore. So listening to positivity is imperative in that process. Listening to positivity is one of the most important. I think all 4 aspects of the SELF acronym are really important, but listening to positivity and being able to circle back to that is a really important part of the SELF method and something that you can exercise your skills and learn how to do. If you don't have that positive voice, training yourself to have that positive voice. If you have a positive voice, but it's more quiet than your negative voice, learning how to listen to that positive voice with positive affirmations, learning how to take compliments. These are all things that will combine together to make you feel more confident. Now I can take compliments and I take them with grace, and I've learned how to say thank you instead of rolling my eyes or just being like, you don't mean that. I say thank you, and I choose to believe in that person's truth and that they feel those things with sincerity. And having that positive heart and that outlook will help you get even further. So far, we have gone through 3 parts of our 4-part self series with my SELF confidence building self method. And I hope you join us next episode for our final phase of my confidence building technique, which is fake it till you make it. I'm Kristianna Mrjenovich, your second chance queen. And remember, you always have a second chance. You just have to be brave enough to take it. Until next time.